Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're actually going to be doing another viewer question, and today it's going to be about free camping slash boondocking. So the question is, how do you know where it's safe to boondock? Can you please comment on how you determine where to stay? So if you guys don't know what free camping in the US is usually called, I don't know about other countries, but we call it boondocking here, which basically means you're camping for free. And sometimes it's considered boondocking if you're just staying at Walmart or a truck stop or something like that. And other people consider boondocking as like more wild camping. Either way, it is dispersed camping, boondocking, whatever you want to call it. But it also means that there are no hookups. So there's no electric, there's no water, there's no bathrooms. You are fully self-sufficient out while you are camping. You're not in a paid campground. Now, there are a lot of camping areas that are designated for free camping that don't have water, electric, or sewer hookups, or even bathrooms or trash. And so you can boondock at those places, but I'm going to talk mostly about the ones that are just wild camping. They're not really for overnights. They're the ones that I generally use to park at for a week or two at a time. So the first part of that question is, how do you determine where it is safe to boondock? And there's kind of two ways to interpret that part of the question. Sometimes people consider safe as you're allowed to do it. Like, I'm safe to park there overnight. I know I won't get the knock or anything like that. Or some people consider that as like safe as in, I'm not going to run into any trouble with other people there. Now, I'm going to answer the first one and then the second one. So the first interpretation of that, like where it is actually safe to boondock, like where you're allowed to do that. If you're a beginner, I always recommend going on Campendium first. Campendium, I think, is called something else now. I can't remember what it has like rebranded to, but the Campendium app and website are like still in existence, even though they continue to like threaten that they're taking it away. I don't really know what's going on there, to be honest, but my app still works. I still have all my saved campsites and everything like that. But basically, the reason I like Campendium for beginners is because a lot of people with RVs use it, and the people who camp in RVs usually have larger rigs. So if you have a larger rig or a larger towable all the way down to a car or an SUV, you generally know you're going to fit most of those places because people make reviews on how large their rig is and if they could get into that place, whether they needed 4-wheel drive or whether it was 2-wheel drive safe or the condition of the road the last time they went in. They're pretty detailed in their reviews, more so than a lot of other apps I've used. So I always recommend for beginners to check out Campendium. There's also other things on there that are really helpful that show if they had self-service there, what cell carrier they had, how long they stayed, if they had any other issues. So that's where you can get some of the more detailed information. Then there's places like iOverlander, freecampsites.net, and tons of other little apps in between, like The Dirt and everything like that, that basically have places marked off that you can boondock, but you can't always guarantee, one, that your rig is going to fit there because not everybody updates if it's big rig friendly or not. And also, especially iOverlander, that's the one that a lot of car campers use and van lifers. So that's a lot more of stealth camping rather than just boondocking, if you want to say that. So it's a little bit different of a vibe, which is why I always recommend starting with Campendium. That's how I started. It got me very introduced to what good boondocking looks like. It's most places that are getting reviews within a few months, so you know if a place is open or not, and you don't have to worry about getting kicked out because a place has closed or something like that. Am I saying every single place on there is perfect? Absolutely not. There's been times that I've like shown up to places and it's something seasonal and it's already been closed for the year or hasn't opened yet, and somebody just hasn't reviewed it, and so I try to go in there and like make a review. But that is the good way to be a beginner, to know that it's safe, as in it's an okay place to park, at least overnight. And a lot of places are out on state or federal land, so you can usually park there from 7 days to 16 days. The place I'm at right now is up to 16 days. So the next place you can look is just on the Forest Service website of whatever state you're traveling in, or the BLM site in the state that you're traveling in. Every single place that you're going to be traveling, so whether that's a national forest, a national grassland, anything like that, is going to have a Forest Service office or a BLM office. And you can just call or walk right in and say, hey, what do you guys have for dispersed campsites? Can I see a map? Can I see if the roads are open? I have a 35-foot Class C. Do you think it would make it there? And they are more than happy to let you know where dispersed camping is allowed. Are they going to give you a really detailed list of every single site that you can be in? Absolutely not. Like, there are hundreds and hundreds of Forest Service roads in every single national forest. They're going to tell you which ones are the most popular. They're going to tell you which ones, they would recommend for beginners or the type of rig you have. And then you kind of have to go from there. If they have designated site spots, which are free, but they want you to park in a certain spot, they'll be numbered. They'll let you know on that. I think a lot of people are really afraid to talk to rangers. And honestly, I get a lot of really good recommendations from rangers. And as a beginner, and you're already talking to the person who manages that area or that office that manages that area, you're going to, one, make sure that you're in the right spot and they're not going to bother you then, like they know that you're there. And then two, you're going to get somebody who literally as their job drives through and manages all of this stuff all day long, and they're gonna know the best spots. I just got a recommendation for a gorgeous hike that hopefully I can show you guys in a vlog from a ranger. I would have never probably gotten on Google Maps and found it if it wasn't for him stopping, saying hi, saying, hey, just to let you know, you can stay here for X amount of days. Also, have you guys checked out this spot? And I said, absolutely not. Let me know where it is. And they're full of good information. Obviously, there's good rangers and bad rangers, but if you don't make contact with them, you're not going to know which ones are the good or the bad, and you're not going to find some of the hidden gems out there, especially if you just want to know, like in off season, if there's not a lot of people around, where are the spots to hit when there's not a lot of crowds, or in the busiest seasons, you can find somewhere that maybe a lot of people haven't gone to and you can hang out by yourself. Now, I know the other part of this question is, how do you know where is safe? You don't. Just like everywhere in the world, right? You have no idea that day what kind of people are going to be camping there, what kind of stuff is going on locally. You could have 100 good reviews and you could be the first person to have a bad experience in a place, and that is part of it. Just the same way as a lot of people love paid campgrounds and like KOAs and all of this stuff, and I have honestly almost never had a good experience staying in a campground or a KOA like that, where it's like so organized and people are together. I've heard more domestic disputes. I've heard more drunken fights. I've had more people say rude things to me and be awful in town in like an organized paid campground than I ever have out in the wild. My theory is always less people, less problems. Have I had issues specifically like one-on-one with a ranger that made me feel really unsafe? Of course, I have. That is part of it. I literally just got done talking to somebody else about it, of a place that I said, hey, you can stop over here. But this last time I had this awful experience with literally the ranger that manages that spot, and he was a jerk and didn't make me feel safe to even stay overnight there. So I packed up and left. You have to have that discernment no matter where you are staying. But I think when people start out, they want to be around people so much, but people are the people who cause problems. I know it's kind of a jump to go somewhere and stay out in nature and feel like you're all alone. That is an acquired taste. It's an acquired safety thing. But the more you do it, the more comfortable it will get. And just at the beginning in general, the more you do anything, the more you're going to be able to tell right away if the vibe is off. You just have to practice. You could go to the highest rated RV park in the entire world, pay hundreds of dollars a night, and still have a problem with your neighbor being awful to you. You could go as far out as you feel like you can drive in your rig, and there's going to be one local that comes out there and again just bothers you or makes a mess of things. You just always kind of have to be on your toes, and that's part of the lifestyle. That's part of travel in general, no matter what kind of travel you do. You could go to New York and stay at the Ritz-Carlton and still have a bad experience in New York, or you could go to New York and stay in a hostel and sleep with 8 bunkmates and have a great time. It's the same thing. The last part of that question was, how do you determine where to stay? So when I first started out, I determined where to stay based off of like, one, usually the weather. I'm looking for places that have the weather that I want to travel in, especially because I started in my Class C and I started obviously in the SUV that you guys saw, and I didn't have heat or air conditioning in either of them. And then when you're boondocking, you need either a generator or a ton of solar to keep up with all of that anyways. So it wasn't something I've ever really done boondocking. So I've always traveled with the weather. A lot of people obviously want to see certain things on their trips, so they want to go to certain locations. There are places that I need to pick up things at, like my storage unit, or like I want to go visit XYZ monument or city, or go on a hike or visit friends or something like that, and that's determining where I'm staying. But I think this question is more specific of like, how do I like narrow down where I'm staying? And part of where I narrow down where I'm staying is what has the most reviews. That's what I did at the beginning. The most reviews mean the most people visit there. And even though we may not all be parked right next to each other like an RV park, lots of people have had lots of differing experiences there. And if I read through the reviews and I see that generally they're pretty good, and maybe like 1 or 2 people have had kind of issues, I kind of note what time of year that is and kind of see. And I started with the most, and then now I look for things of like, well, we went here in February and it was mostly empty but super gorgeous, so glad we stayed. And then I see like on there that they stayed the full 14 days or something, and I think that kind of stuff I gravitate more towards now. But at the beginning, I wanted places where there was a lot of people coming in and out all the time, and knowing that lots of people have had experiences there. I don't really need that as much now, 5 years later, but I think for beginners, and this is where the questions are coming from, I tend to pick those places. Those places also usually have cell phone service. The majority of people, especially in the summer, who are camping and visiting a lot of these dispersed areas, also have cell phone service, because before Starlink kind of came around, those were the places that a lot of people went, because a lot of people want to stay connected, or they have to work on the road or anything like that, right? So the places that were least frequented were the places that didn't have cell phone service. Now with Starlink, that's not really the case anymore. But a lot of people just feel more comfortable with cell phone service, and I think that generally goes hand in hand. I also want to say in this video, just because before I got on the road and I was first looking up all these same videos that you guys basically watched from me, and I was being inspired by, and I was so excited by, I figured boondocking meant you are completely out here all by yourself. Like, no matter how many people, it's so windy. No matter how many people seem to like go to these places, I truly was like, I am going to be in the middle of the forest or the middle of the desert by myself. And it was something that I was excited about, to be like out on my own, and I could just like chill for a minute and it not be a big deal. And let me tell you, these places are so much busier than you would ever imagine. So if you are worried about being so far away from people when you are starting, it's getting harder and harder and harder to get away from people. There are plenty of people at all of these places pretty much any time of the year, unless you're camping in like the dead of winter somewhere in like a foot of snow. Sure, you may not see another soul, but if you're out west, mostly where most of this boondocking is located, especially like literally any time of year, you are going to see other people. Just since I have been filming this video, 4 people have driven by behind me, including a Forest Service ranger. So as much as some of these places look like I am so far out into the wild, there is a Target not even 15 miles from here. So these places are not that far out, and they're not that lonely down a dirt road. So you can find the lonely down a dirt road if you really want to search. There's another person. There they go. You can find lonely down a dirt road if that's what you really truly want, but it does take more work these days to find those places. There are fewer and fewer and fewer out there, just because after the pandemic, a lot of people got on the road, a lot of people got into camping, a lot of people got into overlanding, where a lot of people have 4x4 rigs that can make it to a lot of those places, have Starlink so they can still work and they can hang out without being bothered. And it's very, very rare, even when I try, that I'm the only person there. Maybe I get like a day or two that I'm the only person, but I still see people. It's just the nature of it. It's public land for a reason. There's another one. Public land is public use for everybody, and that's part of the fact that you have no idea who the locals are. Just because you're a visitor doesn't mean that that's not somebody's Sunday routine to go to that spot and go on a hike with their dogs. It's just public land, and you can use it while you're there, and you're very rarely going to be the only person. If you're worried about the safety of an area, or you're thinking about a spot and you want to double check, you can always call that Forest Service office or that BLM office. Bureau of Land Management is who manages federal lands, and then Forest Service is usually state by state or forest by forest. And so you can call each of those offices and say, hey, I'm going to be dispersed camping off of Forest Road 27. Do you feel like that's safe for somebody with just two-wheel drive that's going to be by themselves? Like, do you guys frequently have any issues up there? And they could say, yeah, hey, we have actually had some issues up there. You might want to go to Forest Service 32 instead. They're numbered spots. It's a little bit more organized. You might have a better time there. Or they could say, no, that's a great spot. We never have any issues there. I actually recommend if you go to this and this coordinate, and you're going to have an amazing view. Like, you can call if you want to double check. But the more and more you do it, the more and more you'll get used to just like trying out a new spot. If it works, it works. You can stay. If it doesn't work, you can just move on. That's the fun part about being on the road and traveling. It's about trying new things. It's about doing things to get you out of your comfort zone. You'll be surprised how quickly you can get comfortable with all of that when you first get on the road. You're doing things that you would have never thought you were capable of, and I guarantee finding free dispersed camping, you'll be just fine. I hope that I answered your question. If you guys have other questions that you want me to answer, leave them in the comments below or email them to contactbrookeandpippa@gmail.com, and we will add them to our list, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye!